And we'll probably spend our entire lives trying to research really additional information into this stuff. And the area of research is just growing and growing and growing. But what we do know is really interesting, and I'm going to share a little bit of kind of what we've got recently with you guys and give you a cool place to start on why diversity is so important, what it really is, some things that we're seeing about the internal ecosystem, and then really what we need, what builds the most resilient microbiome, and how we can keep diversity strong or get to a place where our clients are achieving that in their state of health. Okay, so yeah, so diversity determines the resilience of the gut and the overall state of wellness in the entire body. So you have your alpha diversity and you have your beta diversity. And those of you who have done our trainings and you're maybe certified and you've done the advanced gut microbiome testing, you may be a little bit familiar with these terminologies, but you might not be too. So I'm going to kind of clarify. It can be a little confusing on what the difference between alpha and beta diversity is. So alpha diversity is the numbers of strains. It's like the different types of species in the rainforest, right? So you're going to have lots of different kind of animals. You're going to have really high alpha diversity. Beta diversity is the quality of those species are. So you might have a lot of diversity, a lot of different species, but if you don't have larger amounts or ratios of certain family types of bacteria that are usually correlated to the best states of health in the measurable population. So remember that, especially through stool analysis, we're learning more and more about what healthy people, they're taking people and they're looking at all their stats. They're looking at their blood pressure, their body mass index, they're looking at their inflammation and disease markers and all these things. So they're determining who are the healthy people of the population. And as we get more and more information and more stool tests that they've done, and then they've taken that and they've that'll always be a little bit ever changing and evolving, but we kind of have a good pulse on that. So they're looking at that and they're saying, these are the healthy people. Okay. So now let's look at what their guts look like. And let's compare them to each other. And let's take people who have more disease markers and risk factors and all these things. And let's look at what their guts look like. And let's compare them to each other so that we can develop some kind of, the grading system, or so we have something to work toward. And this is where you get your beta diversity. So beta diversity is how your gut measures up, or how a certain gut ecosystem measures up to an ideal ecosystem, a typical gut of someone or a population that is deemed to have very high levels of health. And what they found is when they're looking at these people that have higher levels of health, that there's some common biome species that are in large quantities. So there's a few that they're going to see quite often. So when you're determining a high beta diversity, that means that you have a higher number of the species that have been seen to be in higher quantities and have good positive outcomes on health amongst the comparisons. Does that make sense? That took me a really long time actually to mow over, to understand with kind of how it was presented to me in the first place, to really kind of understand alpha beta diversity. But now I finally get it. So hopefully I was able to re-articulate it a little clearer for you guys. So the resiliency is how easily the biome shifts. So a resilient microbiome, okay, there's things that cause shifting in the microbiome. And the shifting can be caused by a virus. We see this a lot. You'll see this sometimes stomach viruses. All of a sudden people will have gut issues after a stomach virus, or they'll start having a succession of health ailments and stuff. This could be because they didn't have a very resilient microbiome. So when they took that hit, their gut kind of undid itself and became really susceptible to stuff, further exacerbation. So it's how easily it falls out and how easily it comes back. So if okay, maybe you get a virus and it kind of knocks you down, but then your gut builds back really easy, that means you have a pretty resilient microbiome. That means that probably you have a biome that is rich in some of those beta species. And so they have a lot of control and they do a lot of, recon and they put things back together and they restructure and they get it back and going. But if you don't have that, even if you have a higher alpha diversity, if it doesn't look more ideal, like some of those species are not in the ratios that are more ideal for the gut microbiome, then you may see deterioration. So it may be a stomach virus, it may be a medication you took, it may be an impact of stress or trauma in life, maybe a life experience or event, and then you just see an unwinding